They say black boys become men at 18. I became one at 18 when I caught my mama's boyfriend leaving my 12-year-old sister's bedroom at 2 in the morning. My name is Andre Walker, and this is the story of how I chose my sister's safety over my mama's happiness, and how that choice changed everything. Just 3 months earlier, life seemed like it was finally looking up. I had graduated high school with decent grades, landed a job at the Amazon warehouse making $15 an hour, and for the first time in years, our electricity had not been cut off. Mama seemed happy, really happy, for the first time since Daddy left us when I was 14. She was singing gospel songs while cooking breakfast, buying name-brand groceries instead of generic, and even talking about maybe getting her hair done professionally instead of doing it herself in the kitchen sink. The reason for all this good fortune had a name: Kenneth Martinez. Kenny was 45, drove a clean white Chevy Silverado, worked construction, and had moved in with us about 6 months ago. He paid the rent, bought groceries, and treated Mama like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. After years of struggle, eating cereal for dinner, walking everywhere because the car was broken, wearing hand-me-downs from church, Kenny seemed like an answer to prayer. I was grateful, honestly. Mama deserved happiness after everything she had been through. She had worked double shifts at the hospital as a cleaner, picked up extra hours at the grocery store on weekends, and never once complained about how hard things were. When Kenny showed up with his steady paycheck and kind words, I thought maybe God was finally looking out for us. My little sister Keisha was 12, in 7th grade, and the smartest kid I knew. She was always reading, always asking questions, always dreaming about going to college and becoming a doctor like the ones Mama cleaned up after. Kenny seemed to like her too. He helped her with math homework, bought her new school supplies, and even got her a laptop for her birthday. I thought it was sweet how much attention he paid to her education. But something started changing about 3 weeks ago. Keisha stopped talking as much at dinner. She started wearing baggy clothes instead of the cute outfits she used to love. She would flinch when Kenny tried to give her his usual fatherly hugs. When I asked her what was wrong, she would just shrug and say she was tired or had a headache. Then came that Tuesday night in September that changed everything. I had been working the late shift at the warehouse and got home around 1:30 a.m. The house was dark except for the blue glow of the TV in Mama's room. I was heading to the kitchen to grab something to eat when I heard a door creak open down the hallway. I froze, thinking maybe it was Mama going to the bathroom. Instead, I saw Kenny's silhouette stepping out of Keisha's bedroom. He closed the door quietly behind him and tiptoed toward the living room. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, hidden in the shadows, watching as he adjusted his clothes and ran his hand through his hair before disappearing into Mama's bedroom. Everything inside me wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Keisha had been sick. Maybe she had called for help with something. Maybe I was seeing things wrong in the darkness. But deep in my gut, I knew exactly what I had witnessed. And I knew that my childhood, what was left of it, had just ended. I did not sleep that night. I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through possibilities and plans. By morning, I had made a decision that would either save my sister or destroy my family, maybe both. The next day at work, I could barely concentrate. My supervisor asked me twice if I was feeling all right because I kept making mistakes on simple tasks. During my lunch break, I sat in my car and called my cousin Marcus, who was 24 and worked as a security guard. Marcus was the closest thing to an older brother I had ever had, and he was one of the few people in our family who did not sugarcoat hard truths. "Marcus," I said, "if I tell you something, will you tell me what you think I should do?" "Always, little cousin. What is going on?" I told him what I had seen the night before. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "Andre," Marcus finally said, his voice serious, "you know what you saw, and you know what you have to do. The question is whether you are ready to be the man your sister needs you to be. But what about Mama? This will kill her. Kenny pays for everything. Without him, We will be back to eating ramen and having the lights turned off. Listen to me, Marcus said. Your mama is a grown woman who can take care of herself. Your sister is a child who cannot. There is only one choice here, and you know it. That afternoon, I drove to the public library and spent 2 hours researching what to do when you suspect a child is being abused. I learned about reporting procedures, evidence collection, and legal protections. I discovered that in our state, anyone who suspects child abuse is required by law to report it. I also learned that many children never tell anyone what is happening to them because they are afraid, ashamed, or worried about breaking up their families. When I got home that evening, Kenny was helping Keisha with her science project at the kitchen table. She was staring down at her notebook, barely responding to his questions. Her shoulders were hunched forward, like she was trying to make herself as small as possible. Kenny kept touching her shoulder, her hand, her back, touches that looked innocent to anyone watching, but made my skin crawl now that I knew what to look for. "Hey, Keisha," I said, "can you help me with something in my room real quick?" She jumped up from the table, so fast her chair nearly fell over. "Sure," she said, the first enthusiasm I had heard from her in weeks. Once we were alone in my room with the door closed, I sat on my bed and patted the space next to me. "Keisha, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to tell me the truth, okay?" She looked terrified. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby girl. You are not in trouble. But I think maybe someone else is making you feel like you might be." I watched her face crumble as she realized I knew. Tears started flowing before she said a single word. "He said nobody would believe me," she whispered. "He said if I told, you and Mama would hate me for ruining everything. He said we would be homeless again." "Keisha, look at me." I took her hands in mine. "None of this is your fault. Not one single bit. And I believe you. I saw him coming out of your room last night." She started sobbing then, deep heartbroken sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and wounded inside her. I held her while she cried and told me everything. How it started with inappropriate comments about her developing body. How he began coming into her room to check on her after she went to bed. How the touches became more invasive over time. How he threatened to leave us homeless if she ever told anyone. As I listened to my little sister describe the violation she had been enduring for weeks, I felt something shift inside me. The boy who worried about disappointing Mama died in that moment. In his place rose a man who would protect his sister no matter the cost. "Keisha," I said when she finished talking, "I am going to make this stop. Tonight. But I need you to be brave for a little while longer, okay? What are you going to do?" What I should have done the moment I suspected something was wrong. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I positioned myself in the hallway with my phone ready to record. At 2:15 a.m., just like the night before, Kenny opened Keisha's bedroom door and stepped inside. This time, I was ready. I gave him exactly 3 minutes before I burst through that door with my phone's flashlight blazing and camera recording. What I captured on video was evidence that would send Kenneth Martinez to prison for 8 years. "Get your hands off my sister and get out of this house," I said, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through my veins. Kenny jumped up from Keisha's bed, scrambling to pull up his pants. "Andre, this is not what it looks like. I have been recording for 3 minutes. It is exactly what it looks like. You have 30 seconds to get dressed and get out, or I am calling the police right now." Keisha sat up in her bed, pulling her blankets around her, tears streaming down her face, but relief visible in her eyes for the first time in months. "You cannot tell your mama," Kenny said, panic in his voice. "Think about what this will do to her. Think about the bills. I am thinking about my sister. You have 15 seconds. Kenny threw on his shirt and pushed past me toward the living room. "Your family will be on the street without me," he called back. "We were doing fine before you came along, and we will do fine after you are gone." I heard him gathering his things from Mama's room, heard her wake up and ask what was happening, heard his lies about having to leave suddenly for a family emergency. By the time Mama got up to check on the commotion, Kenny was walking out our front door for the last time. "Andre, what is going on?" Mama asked, standing in the hallway in her robe. Kenny said there was some kind of emergency. Mama, we need to talk. All three of us. The next hour was the hardest of my life. I showed Mama the video I had recorded. I watched her face go through every emotion possible: disbelief, horror, rage, shame, and finally, protective fury. When Keisha confirmed everything I had captured on camera, Mama fell to her knees on the kitchen floor and sobbed. "I am so sorry, baby," she kept saying to Keisha. "I am so sorry I brought him into our home. I am so sorry I did not see." "You could not have known, Mama," I said. "Predators are good at hiding what they really are. That is how they get away with it for so long." But even as I comforted Mama, I knew our troubles were just beginning. Without Kenny's income, we had maybe 2 weeks before we would be behind on rent. The utility bills would start piling up. We would be back to shopping at the dollar store and hoping the car would start each morning. "What are we going to do?" Mama asked, wiping her eyes with a dish towel. "We are going to report this to the police tomorrow," I said. "And then we are going to figure out how to survive without depending on people who hurt us." "But Andre, the money." "Mama, no amount of money is worth what he was doing to Keisha. We will figure out the money. We always have." The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove Mama and Keisha to the police station. Detective Williams, a black woman in her 40s, handled our case with compassion and professionalism. She explained the process, arranged for Keisha to be interviewed by a specialist trained in child abuse cases, and assured us that the video evidence I had collected was more than enough to press charges. "You did the right thing," Detective Williams told me as we waited for the district attorney to arrive. "A lot of young men your age would not have had the courage to act." "I could not let it continue," I said. "She is my sister. You are a good brother. And you are going to be a good man." That afternoon, while Keisha was at school, Mama and I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and my last paycheck stub, trying to figure out how we were going to make it work. The math was not encouraging. Even with my warehouse job, we were going to be short about $800 every month. "I can pick up more hours," I said. "Maybe get a second job. Andre, you are 18 years old. You should be thinking about college, not working 2 jobs to support your mama and sister. College can wait. Family cannot." But Mama shook her head. "No, baby. I will not let you sacrifice your future for my mistakes." "Mama, this was not your mistake. You did not know what Kenny was doing. But I should have seen the signs. I should have protected my baby." That evening, Keisha came home from school with news that surprised us both. She had talked to her guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, about our situation. Mrs. Rodriguez had connected us with a nonprofit organization that helped families dealing with domestic violence and child abuse. They could provide temporary financial assistance, help Mama find better-paying work, and connect us with counseling services. Mrs. Rodriguez said there are programs to help families like us, Keisha said. She said we do not have to go through this alone. 2 days later, we met with Sarah Chun, a social worker from the Family Crisis Center. Sarah explained that we qualified for emergency housing assistance, job placement services for Mama, and counseling for all of us. "The most important thing," Sarah said, "is that you all acted quickly to protect Keisha. Many families struggle with reporting abuse because they are afraid of the financial consequences. We were afraid too," Mama admitted. "But Andre helped me see that Keisha's safety had to come first." "Andre showed remarkable maturity and courage," Sarah said. "He should be proud of the decision he made." Over the next 2 weeks, our lives began to stabilize in ways I had not expected. Mama found a job as a medical assistant at a clinic that paid $3 more per hour than her old hospital job. The Family Crisis Center helped us with rent until Mama's first paycheck came through. Keisha started seeing a counselor who specialized in helping children recover from abuse. And Kenny was arrested at his construction job site and charged with multiple counts of child sexual abuse. Detective Williams called to tell us that our case was airtight and that Kenny would likely face significant prison time. "He will not hurt any other children," she said. "You made sure of that." The hardest part was dealing with some of our extended family's reactions. Kenny had been well-liked by many of our relatives, who had seen him as the man who finally helped our family get back on our feet. When word got out about the charges, not everyone was supportive. My Aunt Linda called Mama crying, saying we were ruining a good man's life over misunderstandings. My Uncle Robert suggested that maybe we should have handled things within the family instead of involving the police. Y'all are going to regret this when you are eating beans and rice again, Aunt Linda said during a particularly heated phone call. I took the phone from Mama. Aunt Linda, with all due respect, we would rather eat beans and rice than let someone hurt Keisha. That is not negotiable. Andre, you are just a boy. You do not understand how hard it is for a woman to find a good man. I understand that any man who hurts children is not a good man, and I am not a boy anymore. I am the man who protects this family. But for every relative who questioned our decision, there were others who supported us. My cousin Marcus drove over the next day with 2 bags of groceries and an envelope containing $500. This is from Grandma Betty's emergency fund, he said. She said to tell you she is proud of you for standing up for family. Our neighbor Mrs. Washington, who had raised 4 kids by herself, stopped by with a casserole and some advice. Baby, she told me, what you did took more strength than most grown men have. Your daddy would be proud. You think so? I asked. I know so. Real men protect their families. They do not hurt them. The trial process took several months, but Kenny ultimately pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison and lifetime registration as a sex offender. On the day of sentencing, Detective Williams let us know that our case had helped prosecutors identify 2 other victims who came forward with similar allegations. Your courage to report gave other families the strength to speak up too, she told us. Sitting in that courtroom watching Kenny being led away in handcuffs, I felt something I had not experienced in months: peace. Not happiness exactly, but the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you did the right thing no matter how hard it was. Keisha was seeing her counselor twice a week and slowly returning to the bright, curious girl she had always been. She was talking more at dinner, laughing at my terrible jokes again, and making plans for high school. Her grades had improved, and she had even joined the school's science club. I want to study psychology when I go to college, she told me one evening while we were doing homework together. I want to help other kids who go through what I went through. You are going to be amazing at that, I said. You know what? She said, looking up from her textbook. I am proud of you for standing up to him. I know it was scary. You were the brave one, Keisha. You told me the truth even when you were afraid. But you believed me, and you acted. That made all the difference. Mama had been seeing a counselor too, working through her guilt about bringing Kenny into our home and learning to recognize warning signs she had missed. She was dating herself for the first time in her adult life, focusing on her career and her children instead of finding a man to provide financial security. I realized I was so focused on finding someone to take care of us financially that I forgot my most important job was keeping y'all safe. She told me one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. You did your best with the information you had, I said. None of this was your fault. But I should have listened when you asked me about the changes in Keisha's behavior. I should have paid more attention. Mama, predators count on us not paying attention. They count on us making excuses for their behavior. What matters is that when we found out the truth, we acted on it. As autumn turned to winter, our family had found a new rhythm. Money was still tight, but we were managing without depending on anyone who might hurt us. I had been promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse, which came with a small raise and more responsibility. Mama's medical assistant job offered good benefits and opportunities for advancement. And Keisha was thriving in ways that reminded me of the sister I had always known her to be. One Saturday morning in December, I was getting ready for work when I found a letter slipped under our front door. No return address, but I recognized Kenny's handwriting immediately. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was full of self-pity and attempts at manipulation. Kenny claimed he was sorry, that that he had been drunk and made mistakes, that he missed our family and wanted to make things right when he got out of prison. He asked me to convince Mama and Keisha to write to him, to visit him, to give him another chance. I read the letter twice, then walked to the kitchen where Mama was making breakfast. "Kenny wrote us a letter," I said, handing it to her. Mama read it silently, her jaw tightening with each paragraph. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and walked to the stove where she turned on one of the gas burners. "Mama, what are you doing?" She held the letter over the flame until it caught fire, then dropped it into the sink where it turned to ash. "Some mistakes do not deserve forgiveness," she said, "and some bridges need to stay burned." I stood there watching the ashes wash down the drain, feeling proud of my mama for choosing her children over sympathy for the man who had hurt us. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I am better than okay," she said. "I am free." That afternoon, Keisha came home from school excited about a science fair project she was working on with her best friend Aaliyah. They were building a model solar system and testing how different factors affected planetary orbits. Listening to her explain the physics involved with genuine enthusiasm, I realized that the girl Kenny had tried to steal from us was still there, maybe even stronger than before. "Andre," she said as we were setting the table for dinner, "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to nominate me for this summer program for kids interested in STEM careers. It is at the university, and they provide scholarships for students who cannot afford it." "That sounds incredible, Keisha. You should definitely apply. But it means I would be gone for 6 weeks during summer. Are you and Mama okay with that?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her. At 12 years old, she was already thinking about college, about careers, about a future that extended far beyond our small apartment and family struggles. She was becoming the person she was always meant to be, unbroken by the trauma she had survived. "Keisha, we want you to reach for every opportunity that comes your way. Mama and I will be fine for 6 weeks. What if something happens while I am gone? Then we will handle it, just like we always do. Together." That evening, as I was getting ready for my night shift at the warehouse, Mama pulled me aside. "Andre, I have been thinking about something. You have been taking care of this family since you were 14 years old, working and helping with bills and stepping up whenever I needed you. But you are 18 now. You should be living your own life. Mama, this is my life. Y'all are my family. But what about college? What about your dreams?" I had been thinking about the same thing lately. Before all this happened with Kenny, I had been saving money and researching community college programs. I wanted to study business, maybe open my own company someday. But those plans seemed less important now compared to making sure Mama and Keisha were secure. "Maybe I can take some classes part-time while I work," I said. "No, baby. I want you to apply for school for next fall. Full-time. We will figure out how to make it work." "Mama, Andre Walker, you listened to me. You stood up like a man when your family needed you. You made the hardest decision any 18-year-old should ever have to make, and you made it correctly. Now it is time for you to live like the young man you are supposed to be. But what about money? What about? What about trusting that your mama can take care of her own family? I did it before Kenny, and I can do it after Kenny." That night at work, I thought about what Mama had said. I thought about the decision I had made to protect Keisha, and how it had changed not just her life, but all of ours. We were different people now, stronger, more honest with each other, less willing to accept things that hurt us just because they seemed convenient. During my lunch break, I called the community college admissions office and asked them to send me an application packet. 3 days later, I was sitting at the kitchen table filling out college applications when Keisha came home from school with news that made us all smile. "Guess what?" she announced, dropping her backpack by the door. "I got into the summer STEM program. Full scholarship." Mama jumped up from where she had been sorting bills and grabbed Keisha in a huge hug. "I am so proud of you, baby." "There is more," Keisha said, grinning. "Mrs. Rodriguez says if I do well in the program, it could help me get a full scholarship to college when I graduate high school." "A full scholarship?" I asked. "For everything. Tuition, books, room and board. Everything. I looked at my little sister, who just months ago had been afraid to speak up about being abused, and now was talking about full college scholarships and STEM careers. The resilience in her face amazed me. You know what this means? I said. What? It means that refusing to stay quiet about Kenny was not just about protecting you right now. It was about protecting your entire future. Keisha got serious for a moment. Andre, do you think things would have been different if you had not caught him that night? I think things would have gotten much worse before they got better. Do you ever regret it? Turning him in, I mean. Making Mama choose. I thought about her question carefully. Keisha, the hardest part about becoming a man was learning that sometimes doing the right thing feels terrible while you are doing it. But no, I do not regret it. Not for 1 second. Good, she said. Because I want to help other kids who are going through what I went through. And I can only do that because you made sure I survived it. 2 weeks later, I received my acceptance letter to the community college business program. Mama cried when I showed it to her, but they were happy tears. We are all going to be students together, she said. Me taking my medical assistant certification classes, you studying business, and Keisha preparing for her STEM program. It feels like we are all getting a chance to start over, I said. Not start over, Mama corrected. Move forward. We are not erasing what happened. We are building something better because of what we learned. That spring, on a warm Saturday afternoon in May, the three of us were sitting on our front steps watching kids play in the street when Mrs. Washington came over to chat. How y'all doing? She asked, settling herself on her own front steps. We are doing real good, Mrs. Washington, Mama said. Andre is starting college in the fall. Keisha got into a special program for smart kids, and I got promoted to lead medical assistant at the clinic. That is wonderful. You know, I have been watching your family go through this whole situation, and I want to tell you something. Mrs. Washington looked directly at me. Andre, what you did took the kind of courage most adults do not have. You chose the hard right over the easy wrong. I just did what anyone would do, I said. No, baby. That is where you are wrong. Most people, they see something wrong and they hope someone else will handle it. They make excuses. They look the other way. They convince themselves it is not their business, or it is not as bad as it seems. Mrs. Washington shook her head. You did not do any of that. You saw your sister was in danger, and you acted. That is the mark of a real man. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, a new tradition we had started after Kenny left, Keisha looked up from her homework. Andre, can I ask you something? Always. That night when you caught Kenny in my room, were you scared? Terrified, I admitted. I had no idea what was going to happen next. But you did it anyway. Because being scared of the unknown was less important than keeping you safe. I hope when I have kids someday, they have a big brother like you. They will not need one, I said. Because they will have a mama who knows how to spot danger and stop it before it gets too close. Keisha smiled at that, then went back to her homework. I sat there watching her work, remembering the broken girl who used to flinch when anyone tried to touch her, marveling at the confident young woman she was becoming. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I found Mama in the kitchen washing dishes and humming a gospel song, something she had not done in months before Kenny left. Mama, can I ask you something? Course, baby. Do you think we are going to be okay? I mean really okay. Mama dried her hands on a dish towel and turned to face me. Andre, 6 months ago, I thought being okay meant having enough money to pay bills and not worrying about the lights getting cut off. Now I know that being okay means being safe, being honest with each other, and not accepting treatment that hurts us just because it comes with benefits. So are we okay? We are better than okay. We are free, and we are together, and we are raising each other to be strong enough to handle whatever comes next. Even if money gets tight again, even then, because now we know the difference between struggling and suffering. Struggling is temporary and builds character. Suffering is what happens when you let people hurt you because you are afraid of struggling. As I brushed my teeth that night, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw someone I barely recognized. 6 months ago, I had been a boy trying to figure out how to become a man. Tonight, I was a man who had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. I thought about Kenny, sitting in a prison cell, finally facing consequences for his actions. I thought about Keisha, excited about science camp and college scholarships. I thought about Mama, singing while she cooked and taking classes to advance her career. I thought about myself, starting college in the fall with a clear sense of who I was and what I stood for. The decision I made that Tuesday night in September had cost our family our financial security, at least temporarily. It had cost us relationships with family members who valued peace over justice. It had cost us the comfortable illusion that nice-seeming people could not be dangerous. But it had given us something more valuable. The knowledge that we could protect each other, that we would choose what was right over what was easy, and that we were stronger together than any challenge we might face. As I turned off the bathroom light and headed to bed, I realized that becoming a man had not been about turning 18 or getting a job or making tough decisions. It had been about learning to use whatever power I had to protect the people I loved, even when doing so required sacrifices I did not want to make. The boy who worried about disappointing people was gone. In his place was a man who understood that sometimes disappointing the wrong people was the only way to do right by the people who mattered most. And for the first time since that terrible Tuesday night when I caught Kenny leaving my sister's room, I slept peacefully, knowing that our family was safe, honest, and free. If you have been following stories like this one, young men finding the courage to break silence and protect their families, you have been watching something important. The next generation of black men choosing justice over comfort. 2 more stories of young men standing up when it mattered most are right here on your screen. Click the one that speaks to your own journey of finding courage you did not know you had. There are more stories like mine, guys who refused to stay silent, who broke the cycle instead of repeating it. 2 of them are right here on your screen. Click the one that speaks to your own fight. And if you want to walk with a community that knows sometimes saving your family means stopping them, tap the bell. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.